Richard Guerin,
Here.
Alyssa Packer,
Here.
Carl Schultz,
Here.
Aaron Vroman,
Here.
Jack Hilliard.
Here.
Okay, thank you. All right, did everyone have a chance to read the minutes from the November 11th meeting? Are
Yes.
there any updates, any comments? All right, may I please have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of approving November 11th minutes, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Mayor Simpson.
All right, thank you. This is always a good thing that I enjoy doing each year. Camp Hill Borough is extremely fortunate to have many residents who volunteer their time in the community in many ways. In 2012, the borough to recognize a volunteer each year for their volunteerism in the community. The 2020 recipient has shown his commitment to the community in many ways and has volunteered countless hours over the years and continues to do so. His volunteer resume is as follows. He's a former youth sports coach, longtime president of the Athletic Booster Club, Camp Hill sixth grade outdoor education program, Camp Canadensis staff for more than 15 years, and he continues to volunteer. He's a Camp Hill School Board member for 11 years and current president of the board. He was a member of the executive committee comprised of school board and borough council members who oversaw the construction of the stadium, track, and new tennis courts in Seabrook Park. He was also instrumental in the construction of Good Shepherd School. For these reasons and so many more, I'm very proud to announce that Steve Carl is this year's recipient of Camp Hill's Volunteerism Award. And hopefully Steve's on here. Is Steve here? Let's give Steve a hand, a virtual hand. Steve?
Steve, you should be able to turn your video on and unmute yourself if you'd like.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yep,
We
we
can.
can.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Congratulations, Steve.
I made him sure he was, I made sure he was clean.
I was so prepared to talk about somebody different than myself. This is quite an honor. I can't believe this. I'm almost tearful here right now.
Aw.
I'm extremely proud to be a part of this community. I don't know what to tell you guys. I just am. I really am. I'm speechless. Although I would like to take this as an opportunity to say what you guys did this last week with that light show in Seabrook Park, and that just made me feel even more proud. But thank you for this honor. This is incredible. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
your commitment.
Richard, I've got your number, my friend.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, everybody. This is wonderful.
Very
Thank you.
welcome.
Oh my. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
That's it. That was a good one. Okay, now is the time for public comments. You could please raise your hand. You can hover over participants, find your name, click on the raise hand button.
Okay, I'm going to start with Chris Corrigan. I saw his hand first. Sorry, my computer's going a little crazy on me. 1 second.
Thank you. And before I say anything, I just want to congratulate Steve. It's a very well-deserved honor. I've had the honor of knowing Steve and being friends with him almost since we moved here. Our daughters were teammates, classmates, and remain very good friends. And so I'm just thrilled to see this honor go to a guy who really deserves it. Thank you for everything you do, Steve. Really appreciate it. I'm not going to waste a lot of time lecturing you guys on the Sunshine Act. You all know it's wrong that the Personnel Policy and Procedures Committee meetings.
Chris,
should be
I'm so
advertised.
sorry. We do need you to give your address. I apologize. We've got to have it for the record. If you could.
Sure, 3025 Mayfred Lane.
Thank you.
Anyhow, I'm not going to lecture you on the Sunshine Act. You know it's a violation. The policies, Personnel Policy and Procedures Committee meetings need to be advertised, need to be open to the public. There are certain matters you can go into executive session for, but not the whole meeting, not everything. A lot of things that you have been working on in that committee are not subject to being in an executive session. The Team LMI proposal, assuming that it was to do what we were told in the public meeting, no, it can't be an executive session. The only meeting minutes I could find early in the year, there was a meeting where you discussed the contract with the school district for the crossing guards. There's nothing in the Sunshine Act that allows that to be done in private. So, guys, I hate to keep harping on this. I mean, but the Sunshine Act is very easy to understand. I mean, it's plain, simple language, and I don't know why, you can't follow it. And you have been with the other committees. So that, I'll leave it at that. But at any rate, I want to comment not on the retention of the consultant to help with the recruiting, because I think that's probably a really good idea to have somebody who really knows something about borough government to help you recruit a manager. But I'm going to comment on the timing of it. I'm going to suggest to you that it would be very wise of the borough to hold off. You have a good guy running things on an interim basis. Frank really knows what he's doing. And I'm going to suggest that you actually do have the kind of organizational review or review of internal borough operations and opportunities for improvement that you talked about with the Team LMI thing by going into the Department of Community and Economic Development Strategic Management Planning Program. Used to be known as the Earlier Intervention Program. They will give you a grant to bring in an expert to help you create short and long-term financial, managerial, and economic development strategies for the municipality. They will put together a 3 to 5 year financial plan, a management review, and give you recommendations. Once you do that, go through that, you'll actually know what the heck is going on in the borough. You'll have a much better grasp of things, and then you'll be much better suited to recruit a manager who really suits the borough's situation. You can look at things, and I'm not suggesting that you don't need a public works director, but I'm not convinced that you need a separate position as a public works director. You only have one utility and you don't even run the sewer plant yourselves. A public works foreman under the direction of a manager maybe is a way you could save money. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying you do a study like this, you find out, and then you make informed decisions going forward. I really want to be supportive of you. I don't want to be constantly criticizing the council. I want to just see you doing things better. I'm not going to comment on past personnel, but I can tell you right now, you have a guy who knows what he's doing in that seat right now as your interim manager. Use him and take advantage of this time to do things slowly, methodically, and do things right. I'm telling you, I've been through the program when it was still called early intervention twice. It is really an eye opener and really a valuable program. I don't know anybody who's ever gone through it that hasn't found it to be really of value to their municipality. So that's all I'm going to have to say. Thank you. And again, congratulations to Steve. And I thank you guys all for your time. I've got another meeting that I've got to jump into, but I did want to just bring up the stamp program to you. And I hope that, I have talked to some of the council people prior to their election about it, but I know they're busy and they maybe forgot about some things. And again, I just urge you to look into it. I think it would really be helpful to the borough. Thank you.
Madam President, would you like me to briefly touch on some of those comments?
If you could, please, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
And just to clarify, meetings where agency business is deliberated are required to be advertised and held open to the public. However, there's Supreme Court case law in Pennsylvania that expressly provides that gatherings held for information gathering purposes or to allow members to learn about an issue are, despite the fact that they might be helpful in a later decision, are not defined as meetings under the Sunshine Act, and those same rules do not apply. So when you're gathering information, those are not required necessarily to be publicly advertised and attended by the public. Again, that's a Supreme Court case here in Pennsylvania that's held that, from what I understand of the meetings that the Personnel Committee had, that is in fact what happened. And I think that, you know, we'll continue to advise the borough when they need to publicly advertise meetings as required, that you all do a very nice job of reaching out and asking that. And we'll tell you if it needs to be public, and we'll tell you if you can do an information meeting or if it's an executive session, and we'll continue to help advise you on that.
Thank you, Mr. Stinnett. Okay, Julie, I think we have some other hands.
We do. I am going to unmute Michael Vogel.
Hello. I really wasn't prepared to speak tonight, but I do want to make a comment. A lot of talk around town about some Airbnbs that are popping up around town, and I know there's some work that's been being done in some other committee meetings regarding it. I go back and forth with the Airbnb situation, but I know people that live near them. And it's going to become more prevalent in town. Investors are buying up properties all over the place, from all over the country. Airbnbs are very lucrative. As a real estate agent, I don't really hold an opinion for my association, but I am a resident here at 134 South 18th, for the record. I just have a hard time having people buy homes in this town and then have to determine if and when the neighboring house or somebody in the community or in that street is going to have a revolving 24-hour hotel. I also know there's a fine line of over-regulating from the government standpoint, because I do believe that short-term housing is a right, and there are private property rights as well to the owners. And I think there is a benefit to short-term housing, short-term rentals, one-year rentals. But in a good faith or a moral capacity, people shouldn't buy a house, or especially in some of these neighborhoods, it's not cheap to live here, and then have to deal with a 24-hour unregulated hotel next to them. That, you know, many cases is probably fine, but it's just not something. When somebody buys a $300,000-$400,000 house, they're not looking to have, you know, new neighbors every 24 to 48 hours. The problem I have too, where I grapple with, is, well, where does it end from the government standpoint? Are they going to just outlaw rentals altogether? I know we have a rental ordinance, but I just want to bring that to your attention and comment on it as a resident. And I hope there's some good work being done there to find a way to regulate Airbnbs in the community. Thanks.
I can also chime in very briefly on this. I am actually working with Chris Miller on this issue right now. We are looking at a two-prong approach. The first is enforcement, but we're also going to, you know, on a parallel track, try to educate borough residents and property owners that short-term Airbnb style rentals are not permitted in all zoning districts, to try and attack it from an education side as well, because I think some folks may buy a property thinking it's okay to do that. So we should try and handle that from both ends. So we are working actively on that.
Thank you.
Okay, Lori Kennedy.
Excuse me.
Can hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. I thought I lowered my hand, but I'm happy to speak. All I wanted to say was, congratulations to Steve Carl. Honestly, I don't know that anybody deserves it more than him, particularly this year. And his leadership has just been outstanding and tremendous during, you know, this very volatile period of time that we're in. And I just wanted to thank you, Borough Council, for recognizing his hard work. I don't know what we would do without him. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laurie.
Okay, Randy.
Actually, this is Randy Gale, 236 Willow Avenue. And I just want to also reiterate that I think that your choice this year for Volunteer of the Year award was an excellent choice. I have been on the school board now for a number of years with Steve Carl. I've also been to Canadensis with him for a number of years. And in particular, this year with the school board, it's an incredibly difficult year, what with the superintendent retiring and the challenges that we have faced with the COVID situation. And Steve has met the challenge. We really stand in awe of his leadership. He is patient, he is diplomatic, and he works harder than anybody I know in public service. And so I just want to second remarks about Steve and what a wonderful choice he is for this award. Thanks.
Thanks, Randy.
Bob?
Yes, good evening, everybody. One more school board member on here to congratulate Steve Carl, and also just congratulate the mayor and council for bestowing this honor on him. Laurie and Randy said it very well. It's made it, Steve's leadership's made it very easy for me to serve on the school board, and I appreciate all that he's done. I do want to echo one of his comments too, and that is to congratulate you on the parade, the Toys for Tots and the Lights Parade at Seabird Park this year. What a wonderful operation that was, and feather in the cap of the community. So thank you for doing that. That was a great show. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Bob. Please remember when you're making a public comment to state your name and your address.
Great, Jennifer Hoover.
Thanks, Julie. I do have comments, but I see Art Purcell is probably wishing to speak in favor of Steve Carl's recognition as well. So I'd be happy to defer to him first.
You can go ahead. Art can wait.
Okay. Jennifer Hoover, 127 South 31st Street. Just 3 comments. Some others have already expressed some concerns and questions I have. But I think most practically, the most practical question I have concerning the zoning, not zoning, the unlit park hours ordinance. I see AJ is on the call on behalf of Little League. But looking at that and its use of the word Fiala Field, I'm not sure how that applies to the baseball field. So part of that is school district property. The remainder of that is borough property. So that borough property part also includes games played by our soccer team. So I'm just curious. They rent lights, as I understand, for the purpose of those games. So I'm just, if you can clarify the application of that to both baseball and the soccer team's use, and whether or not that would preclude them from playing games after dusk. I think AJ and myself and others would be interested in knowing that. Then next, regarding the budget, you know, I've expressed before, and I think I remain concerned that, you know, we're using significant amount of funds to balance the budget, but additionally, I do appreciate increased attention in trying to improve the financial integrity of the borough, but being able to put up to 25% of your revenue into a fund that would basically still not require you to draw down any type of reserve before you could raise taxes if circumstances warranted it, remains a concern for me and other taxpayers in the district, in the borough. And then finally, I do appreciate the attention to the drive-through issue. It is just very unfortunate that it's taken not 1 year, but 2 years and a sale of a property that cost and provided you $15,000 and a headache of legal bills later. So I do appreciate it, but I just can't believe it took this long to try and make those improvements. And as you continue to look at allowable uses and changing those tables to do so with as much consideration you can for the borough, and its residents would be helpful. And looking through tonight's meeting minutes, the idea of a boutique hotel and a mini parking garage in downtown Camp Hill caught me by surprise, and I think many others. So I hope other residents will continue to call in and listen and ask questions of council. Thank you.
I think,
Okay.
I think Lee Stinnet's has a
Oh, sure.
Jennifer, on that's the question about the lights in soccer and baseball was actually a question that Audrey raised. So we thought it easiest to deal with that using the existing subparagraph C that uses park use permits that are issued by the borough manager to help deal with that, while also having a record of the nights on which they will be using the fields to help the police chief understand when people are supposed to be there. So that was taken into account and thought best to handle it through that methodology.
Thanks. Okay. Poor Art. Thanks for your patience.
No sweat. Thanks, Lee. Art Purcell, 248 North 29th Street. Multi-generations in the borough, lifelong resident, a colleague and friend of Steve's. I'm on the school board, and I just want to say, hooray, Steve. Way to go, man. Just couldn't be a better demonstration of our appreciation for all your hard work. And likewise to the Borough Council, thanks for all your service to the borough. Having served on the school board through this interesting crisis, I've realized how difficult public service is at times like these, and genuinely appreciate all your work. So thanks.
Thanks, Art. All right, Julie, any more hands?
That's it.
Okay, there'll be another time for public comments at the end of the meeting. So we're going to move forward. Public safety, Aaron Vroman.
Hi, everyone. Public safety, Mayor, do you want to present the police report for the month?
Yeah, real quickly, thank you. The number of calls handled by officers in November was 617. The fire department ran 33 calls and 68 hours on those calls. Activities such as coffee with a cop and the police officers visiting schools is suspended until further notice for obvious reasons. And I believe that's all I have. Chief, do you have anything? No? Okay. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor and Chief. The next item on our agenda is to seek authorization to advertise an ordinance amendment to the park hours for unlit parks specifically. It is in the parks ordinance under chapter 145-3, and the drafted ordinance I asked our solicitor to create reads, the parks shall be closed from 11 p.m. prevailing time until sunrise, except for Schaefer Park and Fiala Field, which shall be closed from dusk till dawn. This was raised, and of course, Part A goes on, but this concern was raised in our Public Safety Committee originally, and I also brought it to Parks and Rec for discussion because I'm also a member there, and it was brought to our attention by the Chief of Police and the Mayor of the borough, because it is unsafe in the winter, specifically because it gets dark so early, and it is pitch black in Schaefer Park at that time. Now, one of our residents did bring up a really great point, and the part of Fiala Field that is owned by the borough, because part of it is not borough field, they do have sports games, and they do have a schedule of events that the borough can approve through Part C under that chapter, which reads, the borough manager is authorized to issue after hours park use permits for specific nights only, and only upon satisfactory completion of an application form acceptable. And that is part of the process of reviewing their schedule and light rental and whatnot ahead of time. So I don't foresee that as a hiccup to the baseball and soccer games, potentially softball. I'm not sure who all uses that part of the field. But while it is lit, basically it would have approval to be open. So we did include Fiala Field wording because it is not a full-time lit park. I do want to open this to discussion with the intention to approve for advertising. So does any other council have comments?
Why don't, Erin, how about if you go ahead and make a motion and second it, and it'll be on the floor, and then we can have discussion.
I make a motion to have council approve the average I'm sorry, I motion to approve and advertise the ordinance amendment to modify park hours for unlit parks.
Second.
Okay. Any questions for Erin, thoughts, concerns?
Well, I just want to say, I mentioned this in the Park and Rec Committee meeting. I can understand with the proximity of homes to Schaefer Park, the reasoning behind dusk to dawn closure. But with regard to Fiala Field, it's such a huge space and there's such distance to homes. I know those fields are used as cut-throughs from one neighborhood to another. And as I mentioned at the meeting, especially in summer, I mean, I know the sun goes down later, but even after that, kids are playing hide and seek and capture the flag and running all over Fiala, both the school-owned property and the borough-owned property. So I'm not as I'm not as understanding of closing that particular park.
Yeah, I think I've said the same thing. I'm on public safety and we talked about this at a different council meeting. I was kind of hoping, Schaefer was a new park. I mean, now that it's winter time kids aren't going to be gathering, and next year we'll be in year 2. Will the novelty wear off so that there's not, 60 kids there all night long? I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of kind of closing the parks and kicking kids out of them, because I think that's a better place for people to be running around than, some alternatives. So, I mean, I'm not going to talk through all my comments from before, but I kind of share the same concerns that Bonnie has. And I do understand the point, and, Mayor and the chief explained some situations where, I can see the other side of it as well, but I do share the concerns.
I think the problem is at Schaefer, right? It's dark and it's also dangerous. The equipment there, kids playing in the dark on the equipment is dangerous, and it really has become a disturbance for the neighbors where it's interfering with their quality of life. The police aren't going to they're not going to go around and patrol the parks to kick out kids who are like walking through a park. This allows them, like right now as it is, neighbors can call the police because there's something going on in the park that's problematic and disturbing disturbing them in their homes, and the police can show up and everyone is acts fine when the police show up to deal with it, and they have no way to ask them to leave as it is now. Whereas if somebody calls the police because there's a disturbance in Schaefer, with this ordinance, they're able to ask them to leave. Like, I don't imagine that the police are going to be walking around asking kids playing hide and seek to leave the park in the summer months. I see this as a way to put something in place that allows them to enforce and prevent problems that are happening there. And it hasn't gone away. It's very dark in Schaefer. And, we've all heard in committee what's going on, like the problems that have happened in Schaefer. I think the problem is, like, my understanding is that the problem is we don't want to just say, well, Fiala is different. And, the easiest way to deal with this is to say lit versus unlit parks have different rules.
Well,
I
mean,
go ahead.
oh, go ahead. I was just going to say, you're looking for a reason to include Fiala because it's unlit, but it is not completely surrounded by residential homes, where parking is right beside the park, because the parking is right beside the residential homes the whole way around that park. So I feel like every time you refer to this as a problem, you are referencing Schaefer and the reported problems that are occurring there. And I feel like then that's the part that should be addressed.
We do have the motion just to advertise. So we can vote on that. And we've got 30 days also to get additional feedback from the community as well, before we vote. Richard, did you have a comment?
No, I'm on the fence. I get the safety concerns, but there's also nothing in there. So if I was 14, I get kicked off at 9 o'clock. And for some reason I decide to go back at 10 o'clock, what's the fine? What's the arrest? There's no enforcement of it. There's no, what's the punishment? What's the detriment? What's the deterrent for a child to listen one night versus the next night? You're not going to punish a child, right? So I'm not sure the real need for it, or if this is the best way it's written. Like Zach said, we do need a place for kids to be able to gather safely. I'm just not sure there's not a better way to address it. That's all.
I think that's the problem, though. This was brought back to me by the mayor and the chief because it's unsafe to gather there. And when it is unsafe and there is unsafe activity, this ordinance change would give the police the ability to say, come on, move on, guys, instead of there's nothing we can do. They look fine. They can't tell someone to leave the park if they're just hanging out in the park. But if there's an ordinance that has that it's closed at dusk, they can say move along. At least there's that.
Yeah, but 5 o'clock in December and they have to be out of the park at 5 o'clock is.
If there is unsafe activity, they're not policing and patrolling the park.
That's not what the ordinance says. The ordinance says for unsafe activities, it says dusk to dawn. So if I was there at 5 o'clock tonight, I get kicked out from just hanging out, talking to my friends at Schaefer. I get the problem at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the summertime. I'm just not sure.
And they can
Again,
walk.
for me, it's the best way it's written.
Over to Beverly, which is lit and right around the corner.
Right. Or Siebert, which is highly lit and, has much more activity there. But they choose Schaefer because it's dark.
I think what I've heard is there's a need for this in some circumstances, not in others, potentially. It's not going to be strictly enforced all the time. Like any law or ordinance, the authorities have a degree of discretion in how and when they enforce. And, if that is the case, and they're not going to be busting up hide and seek games, that are not causing any kind of problem, but will have the authority, then I'd be okay with it. I guess I'd ask Chief or Aaron, is that the intent, that this would be enforced with some good judgment and not across the board?
That's the intent.
But again, what's the punishment if a child is caught one Friday, the next Friday, the following Friday?
Maybe the chief.
Is there fining? Is there, what do you do? I mean, where do you draw the line?
Chief, do you want to chime in?
Sure. First of all, I think, as Bonnie, I think, pointed out, the dynamics of what's going on with kids at Schaefer versus Fiala are a little bit different. We don't get complaints about Fiala, at least if we do, they're very seldom. We get a lot of complaints, and I think some of you have received complaints about the after dark, after hours gatherings in Schaefer Park. And we're not interested or looking to cite anybody. I think that the ordinance actually later on would allow for citing someone under this park ordinance if they were violating the dusk to dawn prohibition. Again, quite frankly, we're not interested or looking for an opportunity to cite someone. But I think with this ordinance change, what we would probably be able to do 99 times out of 100 would simply say, okay, guys, it's after dark, the park is closed, you need to move along. And when we encounter youngsters like that, and the youngsters we're talking about are probably adolescents and older. They're not younger children as far as this issue goes in Schaefer. They comply when the officers come by, and they haven't been able to say this, but if this was changed, an officer would simply be able to give that warning. The park is closed now. It's after dusk. You guys need to head on home or someplace else, or Siebert.
So Chief, are you saying that currently they can't just ask, say to the children that there have been complaints, it's time for them to go home?
We might be able to say that, but unless we know that the person that we're talking to is the same person that a neighbor several houses away called about the kids that are making too much noise and cursing and carrying on are the same ones, we can't tell them you got to leave because the park is closed. We can say you got to be quiet, keep the noise down, stop the tomfoolery that's disturbing the other neighbors. Quite frankly, this ordinance change makes it easy for us to simply advise people, you have to leave, the park is closed now, it's after dark. And there doesn't have to be a determination of whether or not these youngsters are actually engaging in some other kind of misconduct or disorderly conduct or something else. And again, this has been driven by feedback from the neighbors, primarily those bordering Schaefer Park. I know we get calls, Audrey gets calls the next day or even that night. Sometimes I think Audrey gets calls also, as well as the police.
So I would just say, I appreciate that explanation, Chief. It makes sense to me. I think if we adopt this and we find that Steve and the police are just going crazy, citing 6-year-olds, we can amend it and take it away. But I really don't expect that to happen. And I'd like to give them the authority to address these legitimate concerns.
If there's no other comments, we do have a motion on the table. So all those in favor of advertising the ordinance to amend, modify the park hours for unlit parks, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please raise your hand. Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, Erin, anything else?
No, nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, Borough Manager's report, Mr. Lynch.
Yes, a couple of quick things. You have my monthly report in your packets. And 3 items that I would ask some action on tonight. One is the cable TV franchise agreement with Verizon TV, FiOS. This was a joint negotiation effort. 29 municipalities in the Capital Region COG, along with the Borough, came to a very similar agreement tailored to the individual municipalities, but they're all roughly the same thing. It's a 10-year agreement, and I think, as you know, in order to provide cable service to residents, a cable company must have a valid franchise agreement with municipality that they serve. There's a couple of safety and public safety and service provisions, very strong provisions in the agreement. And it does provide for a 5% franchise fee payable to the borough based on the dollar volume of cable services sold in the municipality. The current agreement expired in 2008.
or 2018, but under mutual agreement, it continued until good faith negotiations resulted in a new agreement. So we have that. It's before you. It's something I would recommend that you consider adopting.
Thanks. Anything else?
That's it. Well, I have a couple other things, but I would ask for.
Well, do we need to, do you have that assigned to a committee chair to make that motion for you?
There is a resolution in your packet. I guess the closest would be Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Zach, when we get to finance, let's you and Frank can help you craft a motion and we can.
Okay.
Frank, can I ask a question?
Yes.
What do we have those agreements with other cable franchises? You said they're required to have these.
Yes. You also have one with Comcast, and Comcast expires in, I believe it's 2 years from now, maybe a year and a half, but we're still in what's called a 36-month window where we can negotiate. The COG has already negotiated with Comcast, but I checked it out with the Cohen Group, who did our current agreement, and we will be allowed to negotiate to get into that window under the reduced fee structure that was charged to the other municipalities in the COG.
Good.
So does that mean only Verizon and Comcast are available to us?
They're the only ones that ask for a franchise agreement, which is needed. Yeah, they're the only two cable companies. This does not apply to dish companies or any kind of over-the-top service like Netflix or Hulu. It just applies to, and the basic thing is, whatever company has wires running up and down your streets from poles in the borough, they're the ones that are called a cable company. There's all kinds of case law in that, but the only two currently here and pretty much everywhere in the United States is or in Pennsylvania is these two.
Wow. Well, thank you.
And Frank, my understanding is that you have some expertise in this area, correct?
Not at all. Not at all.
This
like, boy, are we lucky we have Frank here.
I was on the other side of this argument a few years ago.
This looks reasonable to you. There are no major changes from the previous version.
Absolutely. It's good. And it's vetted by Dan Cohen, who actually negotiated the first agreement in his career in central Pennsylvania, and Camp Hill was part of that in the year 2000. It started in 1999, but it was the year 2000.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll get to that in the finance report.
Okay, two other things I'd like to present to you and ask your concurrence and action on. One is I provided you with a list of all the council and committee meetings for the year 2000. Right now, we have this little rodeo of advertising meetings on an ad hoc basis, not ad hoc as in zoning ad hoc. But anyway, I put together a schedule. Most municipalities do this, lay them all out for the year so that there's some certainty and we don't forget about advertising. It's just laid it out there for the year. So I would ask a motion and approval for Julie to place that in the newspaper to advertise them. And they're both for, the planning and zoning and zoning hearing board is one. And the other is all the council and all the other boards and commissions in the borough that support borough operations.
We can do that. I'm just trying to figure out what department that would come under and who hasn't spoken yet. Maybe we could have Carl tackle that in community and business relations.
That'll work.
Okay, thanks.
And the final from me is in your packets also, you'll find a committee appointment list. And I put that together with Julie. Actually, Julie put it together at my request for your January appointments so that you can look at it. And if you want to, there's a vacancy and you want to have somebody, give you some time to consider who would be a good candidate and to have the public also be able to have a look and see if there are any volunteers out there. We always welcome volunteers. But there are two critical positions in my view, and they are two vacancies coming up on the zoning hearing board. The zoning hearing board, as you all know, is a quasi judicial body, and the three members, two will be vacant, two of those positions will be vacant for their next meeting. And if there is business for the zoning hearing board, since the zoning hearing board meets before council, you will not have an opportunity after tonight to fill those two seats. So in my view, the borough can't afford to get caught without having those two seats filled on the next meeting date, which I believe is January 15th. So I would ask for, and both Mr. Lentz and Mr. Twyford have expressed an interest in continuing service if it's the will of.
Okay, let's put that in with personnel when Alyssa gives her report, and we'll have her make the motions to approve those two
Okay,
positions.
perfect. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Okay, Zach.
Okay, thank you. All right, so first up on the agenda, I'd like to make a motion to pay the checks for November 2020 in the amount of $1,181,350.88.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor of approving checks for November 2020, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Okay, thank you.
Okay, item 2. So we've talked about this a lot, but I'd like to make a motion to approve the 2021 budget for the borough and also for the Stormwater Authority.
Second.
Thank you.
As far as discussion goes, I'm not going to go through this. We've had, I don't know, about a dozen meetings, over the last 5-6 months. But the budget's been advertised, and, in the back of it, it also included the Camp Hill Borough Municipal Authority budget for 2021, which is the Stormwater Authority. We call it the Stormwater Authority. That's new. So this is the first time that we're, going to approve both. And the process was that the Stormwater Authority would send it to council for council's ultimate approval. So that's the only thing that's a little bit different this year. But is there any other questions? Okay.
Okay. No further questions, then let's have a vote to approve the 2021 budget. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 All those opposed, all those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right. The budget has passed, Mr. Williard.
Okay, great. No problem.
Thank you.
Okay, item 3. So we do this each year, or we have done it each year, but I'd like to make a motion to remove the non-uniform pension contributions for fiscal year 2021.
Second.
So the real brief, this was in Frank's report, but the real brief explanation is, we take this action each year. And right now we're able to do this because our pension fund is fully, it's 100%, more than 100% funded according to our actuarial audit. So that's a very good thing. So this is kind of a nice borough offering to our employees that we're not making them contribute in the next budget year because we're already at 100% funding.
Now, Zach, I want to see if I remember correct. This is non-uniform, union non-uniform. This is the public works employees, not borough staff, who's on a different plan. This is union non-uniform.
Now, this is both, if I may. It's both administrative staff and collective bargaining staff, but it is non-uniform, Rich.
Right. I just want to make sure because it's not for all the employees.
Right.
Because the newest hires in the last 4 years are on a different plan. Like Mr. Dennis was on a different plan. Rachel's on a different plan. She has to contribute no matter what. It's part of her plan. We can't waive her contribution. This would just be people on the pension plan prior to 2007. Pension plans are in place prior to 2017 for non-uniform people.
I can check with Ray tomorrow, but I believe it applies to everyone, all of them, because as of today, and I just shared this with Zach, our pension plan, which covers every employee, is funded at 110.5%.
Again, it's not the same plan. We're not talking about the same thing. We have 3 plans in town, one for police, one for the non-uniform union employees, and some borough staff, include like people who've been here a long time, Audrey, so forth, Chris. But we have a new pension plan that's been in place for the administrative staff since 2000, and I think it's 17, it might be 16, that she be fall under. Any hires since then do not fall underneath the pension plan you're talking.
Right, and that's that's what we've done the previous years, is it's the non-uniform, but not those, I think there was 3 employees, as you said, it was
Right,
Pat,
the 3
Rachel,
newest employees. Yep.
somebody else.
Yeah, they have a 401k.
So I don't think we have the ability to waive their
No, it's a complete.
contribution.
Yeah, I just want to make sure those employees are aware they'll still be deducted out each pay period.
Yeah, they know that.
Good point.
Okay, any other comments? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor of removing the non-uniform pension contributions for fiscal year 2021, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, and it's a great thing for us that we get to do this every year. That's just, it's good fiscal stewardship.
Yes, yeah, that's very good. Most pension plans are not 100% funded.
Right.
Okay, so moving on to the next item, I'd like to make a motion to increase the tax collector's salary by $3,500 over the current, hold on, I'm trying to find it, over the current rate of $7,500 per year. So it would be increasing the pay to $11,000.
Can I get a second? Thank you. Now, just so everyone understands that the current tax collector is making this request for the future tax collector. The way it works, you have, if you want to have an increase for the position, it can't be done in the current year. And the current tax collector is not going to be running again. So she's trying to set in place for a future tax collector to be paid what she thinks is a more commensurate salary.
Yeah, and it is a large percentage increase, as far as raises go, but, Frank said that he and staff did look at, neighboring municipalities, and we're very low as far as what the tax collector's salary is.
The previous tax collector did not do this for our current tax collector.
Correct.
When they left. So there was a catch up. We have catching up to do.
You are correct.
And I believe Diane was on the call, or at least she was planning to, in case you have any questions for her.
Does anyone have any other comments, questions? Okay, all those in favor of increasing the tax collector salary to $11,000, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you. And Zach, if you'll do the cable franchise, please.
Yeah, so for an item number 5, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Verizon franchise agreement.
Second.
Thank you. I think Frank explained it pretty well, but he is the expert. So if anyone has any more questions, Zach.
When do we need to have any, since it wasn't on the agenda, are we supposed to have like a separate public comment period? I don't know.
No, it's on the agenda and it's not an ordinance. It's just a resolution.
Okay.
Resolution authorizing the adoption of the agreement.
Okay.
So I have one question, just curious, because I don't know the answer to it. How much money, how much revenue does that bring to the borough?
I knew somebody to ask that. Look it up.
I think it's in the Excel files from the budget, right?
It's
Yeah,
in
I
there.
didn't.
We
Yeah,
saw it.
I
I don't remember offhand.
Yeah, so, and we did lower this for 2021, but I think last year we had budgeted 175,000.
Right. It used to be 220,000 and it's changed a little bit lower each time we go around.
Right. And that's for both cable or Comcast and Verizon. Is that right, Rich?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is a real revenue
It's real
line
number.
item.
It's real money. Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that
It's not-
low as people are starting to use like Netflix and Hulu more and giving up cable?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Good question. Okay. All right. All those in favor of approving the Verizon Cable TV franchise agreement, please say your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, thank you very much, Zach.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
That's it, okay. All right, Public Works, Bonnie.
Okay, just to let the public know, we had been scheduled to have a meeting, I think it was December 4th, the Public Works Committee meeting, which I had canceled because we are still waiting to get some information back from Penn Waste regarding potential options, wiggle room in pricing, just that we can evaluate and make a determination if we want to retain Penn Waste as our trash company or go out for RFP. So at any rate, that's where we stand on that. As soon as we get information, we will schedule a Public Works meeting if it's sooner than the January scheduled meeting. So engineers report, Mike, I will make the motions for these and then we'll get a second and we'll just discuss them. So action items for Challenger Baseball. HRG has reviewed and I'm making a motion to recommend approval of change order number 2 in the amount of $3,584 to add fencing if the borough agrees, to add fencing in front of the dugout slabs at the Challenger baseball field.
I have a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
So go ahead, Mike.
You'll probably recall that the Challenger Baseball Project is a joint effort between the borough and the Baseball Association. Our direction from the manager and the Public Works Director when we first bid this job back in 2019 with regard to the dugouts is that the contractor should install a reinforced concrete slab and that the Baseball Association would then construct dugouts on the concrete slab. Appears there was a miscommunication somewhere along the line. The Baseball Association's expectation was that the concrete slab for the dugout would have fencing along the front face and that would not have to be constructed as part of the dugout. That would be built under the field contract. So we identified that issue at the substantial completion walkthrough several weeks ago. We got pricing from the contractor to do that fencing so that if the borough wishes to add it, that it would match. It would be the same material, the same hardware as the rest of the fencing on the project. And he would do it at the same unit price that's in the contract for the rest of the fencing. And that's what the $3,584 works out to is that length at the unit price for fencing.
Any questions for Mike? Okay, all those in favor of approving change order number 2 in the amount of $3,584, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, that's passed. Next one, Bonnie.
Okay, regarding the 19th and Chestnut Pedestrian Refuge Island, HRG has reviewed and I'm recommending approval of application for payment number 1 in the motion of $4,995 with a balance remaining of $70,301.30.
Second.
Thank you.
This is just the first pay application of several that we'll probably receive for the 19th and Chestnut Median Island. The contractor did mobilize and get a little bit of work started in the month of November. So they have this first small payment application. The rest of the job is proceeding nicely and we expect to have some more substantial payment applications as they make better progress in the month of December and January, but this is the first one.
Thanks, Mike. Any other questions for Mike? Okay, all those in favor of approving the application for the first payment in the amount of $4,995 on the 19th and Chestnut Pedestrian Refuge Island, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Thank you. Bonnie, anything else for Public Works?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. All right, Carl, Community and Business Relations.
Okay. First, I would like to make a motion to advertise the council and committee, et cetera, meeting schedule as described by Frank earlier.
Second.
Any questions about the meeting schedule?
No, I just want to thank you for putting it together, Frank. Very efficient of you.
All right, all those in favor of advertising the meeting schedule, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, we're going public. Okay.
Okay, so the next item is the streetscape. We've been talking about this for quite a while. I have gone over the history a few times. I'll spare everybody hearing that again. But what I'd like tonight is endorsement from council of the current plan, which I'll describe in a minute. Endorsement to allow us to go forward with two things. One, we need to meet with PennDOT to get the HOP for the work that would take place in the right of way. We also need to apply to borrow the $1 million that we have in the budget to support this project. This would not be the final vote to expend the funds. We still will, assuming we go forward with this, we will get actual bids, and we will then come back to council and ask for a vote on that, which I hope would be positive. But I'm just making the point, to the extent people still have concerns, not entirely sure, this isn't the final move forward. We would borrow the money, we would go ahead with PennDOT, and let's say our financial situation changes in a month or two, we can pull the plug. I hope we don't do that, but we do still have that opportunity. So, we went from the concept to receiving our grant. We've now done the design work. Gibson Thomas has come in front of council a couple times to finalize that design. And the last meeting, there were questions about costs. And so we got some more detail from the engineers about the different cost elements. And then we looked at that, the committee looked at that, because if we did everything that was in the Gibson Thomas proposal, it was quite a lot of money. So we looked at the different parts, and that's been circulated to everybody. It was in the packet. But we are making some recommendations for modification to the project, which would bring the cost to roughly 1.5 million, and then the 20% contingency brings it to 1.8 million. And the 1.8 million is what we have in the budget that we just approved. $700,000 grant, $100,000 borough match, and then the $1 million loan, which, in a way it sounds like a lot, but this is something that we spread over 10 years. It benefits all the current residents of the borough and people going forward. So that is what I would like. Endorsement, I don't know if I need to make a motion on that, and certainly happy to answer any questions or concerns.
I don't know if it's a motion. Frank's coughing up a lung in there, so I can't ask him if we need a motion or not. I think we just need a sort of
Yeah, I defer to Lee, but I think Carl and the committee are looking for a consensus of council that these numbers are in line in the project. I mean, we're going to have meetings that we need to start going to, and discussions to have, to have a sense of council as Carl begins this process on our behalf.
Correct. A consensus is what Carl would need to move forward.
Exactly.
So Carl, I have not had the privilege of attending all the meetings. My schedule doesn't work with everybody else's, but I just have a lot of questions, and I don't know that I do endorse going to PennDOT to kind of keep it moving forward if it is, you know, something that we decide to like stamp of approval all the way. One of the things that bothers me is the reduction of 15th and 16th Street. If in our saldo and ordinance updates, we're going to include that as downtown. And that's $600,000. I'm not trying to spend more money, that's for sure. And a second thing that bothers me a lot, which could offset that, is the note of possible sharing of sidewalk costs with the business owners, or the property owners, I should say. Because residential owners are 100% responsible for their sidewalks. So I would presume that those property owners would be 100% responsible for their sidewalk payments.
So let me address that. Thanks, Aaron. Let me address that on the sidewalks. Yeah, absolutely. You know, residents are expected to pay for sidewalks, and property owners on Market Street are likewise expected to pay for sidewalks. The only reason we haven't said something more definitive is there's an advantage to the borough contracting for the sidewalk work so that it's coordinated rather than the individual property owners doing that. There may be some additional cost. I don't fully understand that with doing that. We also have some sidewalks that, as I understand it, and we'll look into this and figure out the way forward. But you know, there's some sidewalks where clearly we could require the property owner to replace it, and they bear the full cost. There might be sections where, you know, we couldn't really require it. It's not quite that bad, but it makes sense with the project. So that's the sort of thing that Frank and the engineers and I will, and the committee will take a look at. But you know, the fairness aspect we totally get, and you know, it will help defray the cost as well. As for the 2 blocks, yeah, I mean, we're not saying that we would never get to those if they're considered downtown, and there are some businesses there. It was simply a way to make this fit the budget that we think is reasonable at this point. I mean, we could have carved out different pieces. We could have said, you know, well, I guess that's the main thing, carve out different pieces, but we thought that wouldn't be the best approach. So hopefully, you know, we are in a situation where we can say in a year or two, hey, let's finish it and let's do those 2 blocks as well. But at this point, that seemed like the best way really to make this work.
Do you have any cost idea on the sidewalks that are in need of repair and kind of that payback to us? I completely understand us taking the job on and then sending bills out. Do you have any idea what kind of refund we would be getting to those property owners that do need to replace the sidewalks?
You know, numbers that were thrown around before were, as I recall, 100 to 200,000. But I think we need to take a closer look at that.
Okay.
Richard Lee, I don't know if you remember the figures that Pat was mentioning.
Right. One of the things we need to decide, although it may have already been decided. So Gibson Thomas pointed out, it's not like we have to do every single sidewalk. They've pointed out, I think, about 15 occurrences where the sidewalk needs to replace. We need to look at that and do the math on those. I think before we were trying to say, well, it's so many square feet of sidewalk in the borough and that's how much it will cost. That's not really true because we're not replacing all of the sidewalk on Market Street. So we can go back in and add that up. The possibility of some repayment to the businesses is due to prevailing wage. So if they were allowed to do their own sidewalk, not under a municipality, they could get a lesser rate because it's privately done. But when you do it publicly, you have to pay prevailing wage, which could add 20 to 30% to the cost. So it may be the case that then is what would be reimbursed by us because we're asking them to do it all at once and let us run the contract just so that it looks consistent. So that may be the discussion, and then, you know, they would pay the difference after the 20%.
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to say thanks for getting this cost down. You know, we've been talking about it for a while, and at the last meeting, which we had, I think before Thanksgiving, you know, it did seem like the cost was getting kind of too high. So I think we've shrunk that by about $1 million now, which is much more palatable and kind of more in line with, I think, where we were previously.
And I think, Carl, isn't there some sort of deadline for the grant that we need to make sure we move forward?
Right. I think in theory, we could ask for an extension, but it was end of 22, but getting started in this coming spring or summer was needed in order to be within the original deadline.
And Carl, real quick, just because, you know, Frank and the Finance Committee, I think, are curious, you know, the Stormwater Authority is going to borrow some money. We wanted to do that at the same time that the borough was, to save on costs. So I think, you know, the stormwater is ready to do it. So if we're ready to borrow the money, you know, we can kind of start that process, because that takes a couple months to do anyway. So can you just talk about the next steps real quick to make sure that we're on the same page there?
Next steps are to meet with PennDOT, that Gibson Thomas is ready to set up. And the borrowing, you know, we have the figures that are in the spreadsheet I sent around. So that would mean a $1 million borrowing. I guess we could entertain the notion of, well, do we borrow a little bit more for a cushion? I think it makes sense to just go forward with the 1 million at this point. And it does include, when you build in the grant money and the borough share, it does build in already a 20% contingency. There are also aspects of this, and I guess this is an important point. There are many aspects of the streetscape project that are on private property. And, you know, we're not just going to go out and do these things right away. There's going to be discussions with property owners and so forth. And so we will have a little bit of flexibility. Let's say costs are higher than what we're currently anticipating, even with the contingency. I think we can address that through, you know, we put in half the trees. We have agreements with half the property owners in year one, and then we get to the rest in year two, that sort of thing. So I would suggest that we just move forward with the originally proposed amount.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds good.
We don't have a motion for consensus, but can I sort of get a nod? We have consensus for Carl to move forward. Maybe everyone, actually, you can use your thumbs up on the bottom of your Zoom screen. There we go.
Hi.
All right.
I'll just give you a real thumbs up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the button.
I don't see it.
On the right hand side. Anyway, okay.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So there you go, Carl. You got your marching orders.
Thanks, everybody. And thanks for your patience as we go through this. It's been a long process, as everybody knows, and it'll continue for a while, but appreciate the good discussion and the support. And I think it'll be great. You know, this is one of the things that we do with parks, with Siebert. You know, we spend some money, but it's investing in the community, and I think it really pays back. It's what residents want. It's part of making Camp Hill more pedestrian friendly, which I think everybody's strongly in favor of. I'll stop. Thank you.
Hey, Carl, if I could just add, this comes out of the last strategic planning, correct?
Right.
Like, just to give perspective, this is what kind of emerged out of the strategic planning that involved many residents in its last iteration.
Alyssa, that's true, but I said I wasn't going to go through the whole sordid history again, since I've done it.
Sorry.
Carl, is there anything you wanted to give for the coordinate downtown report?
No,
Okay.
Frank puts that on there because I think it was on before, but we don't have a downtown coordinator now. So Frank, I think we can take that off until further notice.
All right. All right.
Roger Wilco, will do.
I do have one question, and it is about the loan process because I don't know, I haven't been through that as a council member. So how do we seek out what the best loan, rates are? Do we just contact banks, or how does that work?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
tell Zach to do it.
what we'll do is we're going to send out a competitive RFP. It's going to go to like 30 banks across PA. And we'll get bids back and compare the bids and then pick the best bid.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Aaron. Parks and Rec. We had a big event last weekend.
Yes. Well, first let's just review a few things on our monthly report before we get to the big bang. But I do want to just point out a few things coming up, and one of them is our holiday home decorating contest in partnership with Blooms by Vickery. Each year we do drive around the borough and look at the home decor, whether it be the front door, lawn, home itself with lights and decor, etc. And we will be doing that next week, early next week, mid next week, so that every quadrant and neighborhood in the borough we will go up and down your streets. There is a whole group of us, and if you are interested in taking place in this contest, you're already in as long as your lights are on. So we will notify you by knocking at your front door later on next week, and we'll post those homes on our website if given permission. And we encourage our residents to drive around. I've seen more lights on homes this past week than I've ever seen in my neighborhood. And our neighborhood gets down with lights. So there's a lot going on in Camp Hill right now. Maybe we were inspired by last weekend's events. I don't know. But when again, you are encouraged to decorate and keep your lights on next week as soon as it's dark out, which is about 4:15. And we will be by, and we're going to pick out our favorites and then have a discussion and award the winners. The other thing of mention is the Recreation Commission openings. We have received a few applications and resumes for, I believe we have 3 openings for the next term. And interviews will be taking place prior to our next council meeting, which is in January. And the first Recreation Committee meeting for 2021 will take place on January 19th. That is a change from earlier in the month, so that we have enough time to interview and select new commission members who are our volunteer extraordinaires of the borough. So again, if you have put in your application, you will be notified and an interview will be set up. And then your first meeting will be on January 19th, 2020, and I believe it's at 6 p.m. That is all I have for the recreation report. The second item on my agenda is to go over the fantastic parade of lights that is for the Toys for Tots. It was in place of our traditional parade down Market Street each year. And in this time of COVID, parades are not allowed. So our director of Parks and Recreation, Audrey Logar, had come up with a fantastic idea. And it did take a community to pull it off, but I am just going to give it to her to give us the report because she deserves all the accolades along with the entire crew who put this together. So Audrey, would you like to give us an update on that?
Sure. At first, this was a community effort. It was not just me. So I just want to say that. Sorry. You guys are awesome. So we started meetings in September, which involved Mark Simpson, Patty Gilroy, John Arsell, Gary Reaney, Bridget Reaney, and Jeff Kapp. I just want to put that out there that they've been working on this since September. We had 27 different displays throughout the park. We were able to collect 55 boxes of toys, plus bikes and toys that were too big for the boxes. We filled 4 ABF freight cubes compared to 1.5 in the years past. We collected $6,081 in cash donations, which we purchased toys for all the Marines. Mark Simpson and his wife and Mike Oxer and his wife played Mr. and Mrs. Claus on Sunday afternoon. And Linda Walton also helped me buy toys on Friday morning. We had support from many businesses and clubs and students in this community. You all should be very proud. Families enjoyed driving through the park and seeing all the lights and Santa. This event could not have taken place without the support of so many businesses, especially Centric Bank, who typically would pay for our mummer band, but this year was willing to let it go towards our event of this fashion. Mid-Penn Bank was a business that contributed ABF Freight, Bloom's, Studio C Salon, Tanya's Cookie Boutique, and Cornerstone Coffee House, which gave hot chocolate and cookies to our volunteers while they worked outside in the cold and the rain, but it was awesome. The fire department helped make our cabin look like a gingerbread house. I told them that, and Mark was all for it, right, Mark? Public Works, they refilled our generators, which we had 6 of them, or 8 of them throughout the park. They capped them off every night and made sure our gas cans were full for our troubleshooters who helped make sure everything was working every evening. Classic Dry Cleaners, they're washing our Santa suit right now, free of charge, which is awesome. Oh. The displays that we had were from Centric Bank, Willard Family, thank you, Zach, Jeff Cap, which did an awesome job along the tennis courts, Cornerstone Coffee House, which decorated our ticket booth, the Camp Hill High School field hockey team, the Camp Hill Softball Association, the Lions Club, Tanya's Cookie Boutique, Mid-Penn Bank did the press box. Gary Rena did an awesome job on our gazebo, as well as helping decorate the woods and anything else we needed done. Camp Hill Soccer Club, the UN Mido Arts from Harrisburg. The Camp Hill Women's Club helped make our fire pit look like a fireplace with Olaf and Bumble. The Parcel family, we had our own little ski ramp going on there. The Camp Hill American Legion Post 43 had our own little Santa mailbox. Studio C Salon did a snowman. Camp Hill High School Environmental Club, Camp Hill High School Key Club, Blooms by Vickery did an awesome stargazing. Camp Hill High School Breakfast Club, Camp Hill Girl Scouts 157 did a whole bunch of artificial trees, and they worked so hard when the winds were coming. Camp Hill Recreation Department, we did the Grinch on the hill, now I'm calling it the Grinch shed, because that's where he's going to be. And the Camp Hill Recreation Commission and Camp Hill Fire Department did the pavilion and the log cabin. Without all of their help, this would not be possible. And I just want to tell you how awesome your community is, and you guys should all be very proud of, especially the kids who came out and on Sunday, Monday, and really worked hard to make your park look awesome. And the PR that your park got, everybody knows about Seabrook Park now. So thank you very much.
I also want to add, thank you, Audrey. Thank you, everyone. I also want to add a huge thank you to Santa. If he's listening, and I'm sure he is, because Santa is magic, he didn't hesitate to join Camp Hill's community and stand outside for 3 nights that he is off for the year, and ho his way through I think 1,700 cars full of people, children, adults, more than once or twice. I know I went through 2 nights. I know the Williard family went through every night. But Santa is to be commended. And we're so happy that he is a part of our volunteer community. So thank you.
And I just want to thank again, Audrey, for everything, like the amount of work and energy that you brought to this project.
Well, I mean, way to pivot. You know, we couldn't have a parade, and I think we had something even more remarkable. So
absolutely.
Well done. Well done to everyone. Very impressive. for our little town. That was really awesome.
I also want to point out, I'm sorry, I know it's our last meeting of the year, but this was Audrey's 25th year as camp director of Seabrook Park. And it's the year that we had to cancel camp. So for Audrey to have this moment and such a spectacular combustion of celebration at the end of what would have been her 25th camp, I'm thrilled that we were able to celebrate in such a way. So thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that is all I have.
Well, that's great. I mean, that was a good report. Okay, back to the mundane, planning and zoning. Sorry, Richard.
I know, how do you top that?
I know, it's awful to have to go after that.
Item A, your monthly reports in your packet. Item B is the motion to adopt the ordinance to amend the Borough zoning ordinance and zoning map. I want to ask Mr. Sten if he wants me to read the whole thing or not.
You don't need to read the entire thing. You can just provide a background on what the ordinance is doing. We have Charlie Schmel here as well that can offer some insight if you'd like.
I appreciate it. We'll do that. In the form of motion, I'm going to do it in two parts. In form of motion, part one is drive-through uses. The following is added to a new subsection 1108E.7 regarding drive-through facility for all zoning districts where the use is allowed. Any part of an outdoor ordering station or building window used for restaurant, motor vehicle drive-through service shall be set back a minimum 150 feet from residential zoning district boundary. This setback will not apply to walk-up window or parking space used for customers to pick up orders that are made in advance over the phone or internet and which do not involve an intercom system. I need a second.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Okay.
Any questions for Charlie after our hearing?
No.
Okay. Just to remind those who are the public who's here, we did have a hearing from 6 to 7 where we did grill Charlie on all of this. So, all right, all those in favor of the ordinance to amend and establish a setback for the restaurant drive-through services, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Okay, motion carries.
Thank you. Item 2, part 2 is a zoning map change. There are 2 lots that are southeast of intersection of Cumberland Boulevard and 21st Street that are currently zoned CHO Commercial Highway District and are hereby changed to be within the MDRO, Medium Density Residential Office District, as shown in the map which is attached.
Second.
Thank you. Questions for that?
I don't have questions. Just for people who weren't on the hearing, I'll just reiterate that I think this is a really important change to make. That corner across from Eisenhower, which includes currently the Bridge Club and the office space, is currently zoned commercial highway. And that opens it up to a range of potential uses that are really undesirable at that location, including convenience store, gas station, things that would increase the traffic, and anyone who has dropped off kids at the school in the morning know how that traffic already backs up at that corner. It was previously MDRO and it's going back. It changed in, Charlie, was that 2015?
I think 2016.
2016, it changed from MDRO to commercial highway occupancy. And I'm glad to see that we are getting it back to the correct, what I feel is the correct zoning.
Okay.
Is there an ordinance number for this? You might want to highlight that. Actually, the 2 items are one ordinance amendment.
Thank you. There was not an ordinance number attached to the draft that I have. If Lee could provide, that'd be great.
And Julie, if you could just note in the minutes that it's the one, that'd be great. Okay, so all those in favor of moving the southeast corner of Cumberland Boulevard and 21st Street from commercial highway to medium density residential office, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Item C, presentation of final revisions to the draft saldo to include comments from the County Planning Commission, zoning consultant, and solicitor. The motion requested, I will do one at a time. I guess the motion to authorize resubmission of the revised saldo to the Borough and County Planning Commissions. I didn't know if we needed a vote on this or not, or we just, what we need to do.
Yes, I would take a vote to authorize staff to take steps necessary to resubmit that to the two planning commissions. And then we'll take a separate action to set a hearing date for that saldo.
Okay.
So I'll reset in the form of motion to authorize resubmission of the revised saldo to the Borough and County Planning Commissions.
Second.
Thank you. Any questions for Richard?
Yes. So what we are accepting the recommendations. So we got the County Planning Commission's responses. We saw Gannett Fleming's responses. I've read all of those over. I know that we've consulted with Charlie to make sure, because many of those comments from Gannett Fleming said, we recommend that we go with what the county is suggesting, because it's better language than you use in your current ordinance. And when you do your zoning changes, you should adopt the language that is being used in the saldo. So in doing this, are we saying, in resubmitting to the Planning Commission and so on, are we saying that we are accepting all of those recommended changes?
So the changes also went through, I'm going to answer for Mr. Stennett, also went through legal review, and I would assume the draft, the HRG, I'm sorry, Gannett Fleming gets a new draft with all the changes submitted.
Correct.
Again, Mr. Stennett, if you want to answer the question then.
Yes, provided to council were several iterations of this. One were Gannett Fleming's initial comments, I believe, on Friday. We then provided responses to some of those and proposed changes on Monday or Tuesday. And then a final version was sent to council that incorporated those proposed changes.
Okay.
And that would be the version you were voting to send back to the planning commissions for re-review out of an abundance of caution.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just had a couple of comments. I didn't have a chance to look at the modified saldo after Gannett Fleming reviewed all the questions. But Alyssa, you had mentioned, well, I'm not quite sure. I got a little bit confused by what you mentioned, but a lot of the responses from Gannett Fleming was that they recommend that the, that Charlie, who's right now our consultant, work through the current ordinances that we have to take the wording from the saldo and put it in the current ordinance. My question is, though, for instance, when I was comparing the saldo definition to some of the zoning ordinance definitions, the zoning ordinance definitions were significantly more detailed than the saldo definitions. And I am surprised that we would want to not make them as detailed in the saldo and then go back into the ordinance and reduce the detail. So I was wondering if somebody could address that particular change. I'm looking at one of the saldo definitions was the setback line. And the saldo said a line drawn parallel with the right-of-way line or lot line and being drawn a distance therefrom by the amount of the front, side, or rear yards required by the borough zoning ordinance. And then in the borough zoning ordinance, it encompasses a reference to said use, structure, the building placement, all kinds of extra variables with regard to the definition of setback. And I'm just a little bit concerned about reducing the detail.
Charlie, can you unmute yourself?
We could have more detail in a zoning definition and a subdivision definition, as long as they're consistent. as long as they don't conflict. So it's not necessarily a matter where we're limited by the subdivision definition. We could add more for zoning purposes if need be.
So I guess my question is, even though the saldo definition may be much less specific, will the zoning ordinance definition always take precedence?
The zoning definition will apply for the zoning ordinance. The saldo definition will apply for the saldo. Now, we want them to be consistent, but if there's something that's different, each ordinance can be interpreted separately.
Bonnie, I totally hear what you're saying, because I believe that maybe Lee Stinnett could help us with this, but I believe in past issues with our saldo, it's been inconsistency in language. So that is also a concern of mine.
The saldo has a provision that the stricter provision will control. So that would deal with discrepancies.
And that would then default to the detailed description.
Whichever one is the stricter of the two conflicting provisions.
Which you might assume would be the detailed one, but not necessarily.
I was actually going to say more detail does not always mean better in definitions.
That's true. There's a lot of extra wording in that zoning ordinance. Doesn't need to be there.
Good questions.
I thought it was a good question. Thanks, Bonnie.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Well, I have one more comment. I'm so sorry. So the saldo, or the response from the county was that, the saldo and the borough zoning ordinance should be evaluated for consistency. For those sections currently, if we're going to move forward to pass the saldo before the zoning ordinance and all the various places need to be updated for consistency purposes, should the saldo in these areas that the county has commented, should the saldo reference the similar areas in the zoning ordinance, so that if somebody's coming in for, review, that person understands that the stricter definition applies and where to look for it, just to make sure. I don't know. I'm just a little bit concerned about it.
Charlie or Lee, do you have any comments on that?
Bonnie, I think what Lee was saying was that the stricter ordinance applies, or the stricter of the two applies
Right.
when there is a development. So they would have to know that.
The other thing we're going to do is we're going to have a cross-reference in the zoning so that we're not going to repeat all the definitions that are in the subdivision ordinance unless there's a good reason to do so. Just adds extra wording. So we'll say if a term's defined in the subdivision ordinance and not defined in the zoning, the subdivision ordinance definition applies. But you may have a period of time where you have to use the zoning definition to interpret the zoning ordinance and the subdivision definition to interpret the subdivision ordinance. It's not ideal. We will be fixing that, but you can't do everything at one time.
And
I was just going to say, it's not uncommon. It's a chicken and the egg situation because it's pretty common that the two are not done at the same exact meeting. The delta between the two meetings varies, but oftentimes this is a problem that you have to deal with as you work through a comprehensive saldo and zoning revision, within a relatively contemporaneous period.
Now, the fortunate thing is you don't get a ton of subdivisions. So, the zoning ordinance is used much more frequently than the subdivision ordinance is.
And Richard, we're planning on the zoning ordinance updates the next round with the uses in the new map. We're thinking January, correct?
Correct. That's our goal.
Which will be the same timing as the saldo, assuming as planned.
Within
Well, it's
30
to start
days,
the
because
process.
after you do the zone, after we come up, the council looks at, we still have to send it to the planning commissions. So it'll be behind the saldo by 30 days or so.
Okay. It'll be close.
Correct. And we do have a draft map and a draft usage table. It's just not exactly ready to send out to all the council yet for approval, but I'm sure in January it will be sent out for review ahead of time.
Bonnie, any other questions?
Not right now.
Okay. We have time. We're just authorizing resubmission. Okay, so all those in favor of having the staff resubmit the revised saldo to the Borough and County Planning Commissions, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. You can also come to the Planning Commission meeting. I don't know the date, but it's coming up, and hear all of it again. Okay.
Super.
you have
Next
one more.
item is a motion to advertise a public hearing to adopt the saldo as revised. Similar to tonight's earlier meeting, we had to have a public hearing for the after the commissions look at it again. And I defer to Mr. Stennett, is what's the earliest time we can have that meeting? Can we do it prior to the general council meeting, or what's the soonest date we could do it? Because I know some are 30 days, some are 45 days.
For a saldo, it's, you have to, essentially you have to provide the planning commission's 45 days before your public hearing to provide comments. So looking at the calendar, and I suggest giving a couple of days to make sure that Virginia can get everything in order to get the final version over. Assuming we submit by Friday, that would put the week of the 25th in play. So if you want to do it before the February meeting, you could look at, say, the 27th, which would satisfy the 45 days. I had Virginia calculate that. I'm a lawyer, not a mathematician, and she agreed with me. So that time frame would work if you'd like to do a special meeting to consider the saldo adoption, and that would satisfy the 45 days.
Okay.
What are everyone's thoughts about doing that day? If that's an acceptable day, I'll make the motion. That's 2 weeks ahead of our council meeting.
So what if there are more comments?
Correct.
That's, I sort of expect we won't have many. We did get I think a 6 or 9 page letter from the County Planning Commission. However, their recommendations, they were pretty comfortable with the document that was submitted previously. I don't know that we really had many substantive comments from the Camp Hill Planning Commission. So I sort of expect a quick review and hopefully a full recommendation with no conditions.
Lee, you might want to check. I forget if a subdivision ordinance is 30 days. I know a new zoning ordinance is 45.
It's 45.
Okay, good.
My preference is to pass, to pass the saldo as quickly as possible.
So in that case, it'd be, I'll
That's
make a
just me though.
motion.
I don't know where
So what's the date? What's the date again?
On the
27th.
Okay. January 27th. We probably hold the hearing at 6 o'clock and then vote at the end of the meeting, I assume.
Yeah.
And if we need to cancel for some reason, we can cancel, but correct, like.
Yeah, but we can advertise.
We allow ourselves to hold the meeting if everything goes as planned.
Right.
Correct.
Right.
So if you want to add that to your motion, Richard, and then we can vote on it.
Yes, make a motion to advertise a public hearing to adopt the saldo as revised on Wednesday, January 27th at 6 o'clock.
Second.
Great. All those in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. All right, we'll see you on the 27th.
Can I
I
ask?
believe that's it. Okay.
Do we need to revise Carl's motion to add that in the dates that we're advertising?
Oh, good point.
Meeting dates that we're advertising?
That's a Frank question.
Well,
Early.
Frank, if you don't mind, we will probably do the advertisement for that because we typically do those for public hearings for ordinances and things. I mean, we'll work with Frank on that, but that would how we typically handle it rather than putting it in the omnibus advertisement, as we've come to call it.
Gotcha.
Makes sense to me. That's fine. Thanks, Lee.
Good. Okay. Anything else, Richard?
No, thank you.
I'm just putting this in my calendar right now.
Okay, Richard, I'm gonna bow out, okay?
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your help. Thanks for being here for everything.
Thanks, Charlie.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Alyssa, personnel.
Thank you, Lee. So in the packet is a proposal from Peter Marshall. I just want to give a little bit of an update on the process here. You know, in talking with Frank, who has a lot of experience in his, you know, as interim manager, but also on the board himself, we really felt that we wanted this applicant pool to be as deep and qualified as possible. We want to make sure that we get a borough manager in here who is able to do the great job that all the residents of this community deserve. So not knowing what the pool is like, we wanted to pursue the possibility of hiring a consultant to help with this. So Frank reached out to a number of people to ask for names of people who do this kind of work. He got a few names and asked them for proposals. A couple of the people, the names he got, they were unable to do the work right now. One felt like it wasn't quite in their area of expertise. Another one had scaled back their work right now because of COVID. But the one person who was doing the work is actually one of the people who has some pretty amazing experiences, Peter Marshall, and his proposal is included in the application package. So Peter Marshall has been a manager in State College for 17 years. Prior to that, he was also a manager in a town in Delaware for 13 years. So he has decades of experience as a borough manager, and then also extensive experience running a consulting firm doing recruiting for municipal governments. So he prepared this proposal for us to consider. The other option, this is up to us how we want to pursue this. The other option is that we run the search ourselves, post ads in the appropriate spots. And Frank has a number of recommendations for us about where we could advertise and, you know, go through the applications from there. I will say that I spoke with council members who were on searches for previous borough managers in our community, and we have not gotten very many applicants. We haven't had the types of applicant pools that that we hope to get in this round of searches. And so that's what I'm putting out there for our discussion tonight. Any questions?
I'll go first. I think it's a good idea to have the search group does it. And if you're happy with Mr. Marshall, I am too.
And he's also going to do a little bit of the vetting too, which will be helpful.
Yeah, so I do have his proposal and it is in the packet. He will develop a challenge statement that is a statement of issues and opportunities in the borough and update we already have a position description that that Mr. Lynch was kind enough to develop in consultation with us. He'll also develop copy and determine ad distribution. He will receive the resumes, but he will go through all of those resumes and confirm receipt with the candidate, vet the resumes. He'll screen for minimum qualifications, conduct interviews, reference checks of the initial group of finalists, do additional background reviews of the candidates that that council wants to interview, and it goes on. But we really, I think, feel like he has the skill set. Let me just look at his resume, which wasn't in the packet, but he did share a resume just for us to review. Yeah, so he has State College, 17 years as borough manager in State College, 13 years in the city of, is it Newark? I never know how to pronounce Newark, Delaware. I'm from New Jersey, so I always want to say Newark. He was also the manager in the city of Hermitage, Pennsylvania for 5 years. And then he's had this consulting firm for a number of years as well. He also is an adjunct professor and does a bunch of teaching. He has his master's from UPenn in governmental administration. So I think that his extensive experience as a borough manager, and he is also on borough council in State College now. So I think his extensive experience as a borough manager will really serve us well in allowing him to identify strong candidates for the position.
And I would just add, Alyssa, that apart from his qualifications, just on the process, several of you weren't involved when we did the search for the chief of police, and we used the, I think it was the Chiefs of Police Association, but it was a similar sort of deal. And it was fantastic in terms of making the process efficient and in getting us a great slate of candidates, and then the final selection of Chief Margison. So I strongly support this.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree, Carl.
Alyssa, is this like the going rate for this type of consultant? Do we have any idea how that compares to others?
He is on the lower end, and Frank might remember the numbers. The gentleman who was not able to do it because of COVID, who does do work like this, I believe wasn't he more in the $10,000 to $20,000 range?
Yeah, I believe it was it 15,000 to 30.
Yeah,
It was high. It was way over 10 at the bottom range.
And this price is very much in line with what we paid the Police Chief Association when we had our police chief search.
Cool.
I
think
think
it's a great idea.
reasonable. Like if we find someone the first week of our search, like he has made it clear that he will, like, consider that in his, the maximum is 6,500.
Right.
Well, I think
And
it's a
we were
great
very
idea.
happy with our police chief search.
Yeah.
We've actually
Yeah, quite honestly, I think this is such an important thing. 6,500 does not seem at all steep in any way. I'm not concerned about that.
Well, especially when you look at the cost of having to dismiss somebody, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had a phone call come on and I had to take it. So I missed, is the consultant going to get us a couple finalists and then we're all going to review them, or what was, okay.
Yep. He'll collect the resumes and then do some initial vetting and then send them over to us for more.
I think it's a win-win.
Okay, so with that conversation, in light of that conversation, then I would like to, let me pull up my paperwork here. Now I can't.
I guess one thing while you're doing that, Alyssa, if this search turns up that we don't find anybody that we like, I mean, I think this is without saying, but we don't have to move forward. We can hit the brakes and make Frank hang out with us if he wants to.
I was gonna say, we'll handcuff him to the Borough Hall.
Frank said he doesn't want to stay, so hurry up.
So I'll throw that out there. I think that's obvious.
I very much think that we all agree with the comments during public comment that we do have an excellent interim manager and we would love to hang on to him as long as possible and slow down our process. But I think Frank would appreciate it if we kept it moving.
Right.
He can always apply.
That's true.
Okay. So I would like, I'm not muted. I would like to then make a motion to accept the proposal to use Peter Marshall the consultant Peter Marshall to assist with recruiting and engage his services as outlined in that contract, in the proposal.
Second.
Any final questions for Alyssa? All right, all those in favor of using Peter Marshall, please say aye and raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay and raise your hand. Okay, we have Peter.
Okay, and then the other thing which just came to me this evening during our meeting was the zoning hearing board. Am I getting that right? The zoning.
Mm-hmm.
I have some concerns about, I would prefer if we were to publicize that there were positions available. And if the current people want to then express their interest and be reappointed, that would be great. But I would like it to be publicly known that there are positions available should anyone new want the opportunity to serve. So if that is not an issue, and I can defer to Lee Stinnett on this, on that, I would suggest that we allow the current members to remain in their positions as holdovers beyond their term, and that we move quickly to advertise and accept letters of interest prior to our next council meeting. So I will allow Lee to share any thoughts he has.
Yeah, I think we also have to look at the terms and see exactly what they are, because the folks that fill vacancies are only permitted to fill the remaining term. So we need to make sure that we know what those terms are and that they're correctly filled.
Okay. And
Right, I hate to see the
they
terms
should
be
be
same.
staggered, which is not, we noticed that they're not currently staggered as they are listed. So we need to figure out, we need to go back and make sure.
It's
And
a,
to be
it's
clear,
a
these are in
three-person-
borough.
It's a 3-person board. 2 are expiring 1 year, and then the third is, I mean, you can only stagger so much. So 2 are, it is staggered. The chief doesn't expire until 2022 or something.
What are the terms though? How long?
The 3-year term, I believe.
Right, so it should be one appointed every year. They're not staggered the way they should be.
Okay.
Yeah, we can correct that with the reappointments too. It's not ideal, but it's something we can deal with setting the terms for the reappointments.
All right, well, if it's okay with you, Alyssa, I'll work with Julie to put a notice on the website listing not only the zoning hearing board members, but all the vacancies that we do have coming up for various committees.
Okay, we list those.
Can we put, because I know it's like January that they expire. So can we extend them for like 90 days or something?
I would not extend for a shorter period than the unexpired term. There's some case law that raises some concerns with doing that.
Because
They expire January 1st.
Is January what, Frank?
January 1st.
Oh, dear.
December 31st.
All right. I mean, we can advertise it right now, but we've got to fill it by the 31st.
Well, what have they done recently? I mean, they haven't had many things come in front. If we don't have one for January, there's nothing on their agenda at the moment, right?
Well, we won't know that until December 22nd, which is the submission deadline. So it's a little bit of a risk. I don't know how much experience you've had with zoning hearing board activity in the borough, but anyway, I just threw that out there because
If we need to, we could have an emergency council meeting to make an appointment of.
sure, New Year's Eve. Yeah, let's do it.
But I mean, we could do it. I mean,
Good,
I
absolutely.
I don't like reappointing people to two new 3-year terms without having made this publicly available, especially since we know, since they're not staggered, that there is an issue with at least one of the 2 terms. And this will give us time to resolve that issue.
Yeah, so I'll work with Julie tomorrow to seek expressions of interest and put it on our website. And also work with Lee in terms of making sure that the terms are correctly staggered. That work?
Yeah.
So I do have a question. What has been done in the past when these terms have expired? Have the persons serving on the zoning hearing board, have they always been extended a renewal, or have we always publicized and sought out others and then made a decision, on others, including the ones that were serving?
In the past, Bonnie, when I first got on council, people could be reappointed without advertising. Council as a whole, I believe it was like 4 years ago, changed it. So it came out with the recreation commission a few years ago. So you have to open it up, you have to reapply. And then the other discussion we've had, and it's changed each year, is who's responsible for doing the interviewing. We made it a point where PP&P did all the interviews for all the committees, including the rec commission, or individual committees recommended did the interviews. For instance, the rec department, rec committee did rec commission, the zoning hearing committee do zoning hearing board. We've gone back and forth. I thought we agreed that PP&P will interview for all the boards and make recommendations to council.
That's how it has been operating.
Well, it hasn't operated that way
with the exception of the rec commission, I think.
Except the rec committee, right?
So we can.
So I would think it should do for all committees should go that way.
Yeah.
And rec committee can weigh in with who they like.
My only concern, and I know Lee said that it can be problematic, but my only concern with waiting till December 22nd to make a decision as to whether, we need to have 5 people on the zoning hearing board, is that I think that looks worse than just extending those individuals through the end of January. than making a late decision
We
for
can't do
5.
that, Bonnie.
We
He
can't.
said we
send their
can't do that, Bonnie.
There's some
I thought
stuff.
he said it wasn't ideal.
No,
Well,
it's law.
Oh,
there's the provisions for reappointing and appointing members to the zoning hearing board is precise, more precise than most other similar statutes, that requires that anyone reappointed shall be for the full term of office.
okay.
And Lee Stinnett, you were saying that to extend someone's time should be for the full term?
If we reappoint someone to that position.
Yeah, okay.
But the way I'm looking at it, and if we don't have anything pending, there's a 60-day window in which to schedule a hearing. If nothing's submitted yet, then January meeting should be fine in terms of the timeline.
Right.
And we'll we'll put it up on our webpage right away, and we'll have names ready to go, and we have 2 people currently interested. And if we need to have a meeting to appoint before the end of the year, we will have a meeting and appoint. Otherwise, we'll do it at our next meeting.
Okay.
Works.
That's all.
Agreed.
All right, anything else, Alyssa?
I guess I can just mention that we've been accepting public works director applications. I believe that the deadline, not that, but we requested that resumes be submitted by the end of this week. And so once they're all submitted, we'll start looking through those resumes and be in the process of interviewing public works directors.
So I do have a question on that, and I think Chris Corrigan's actually the one that brought it up. Do you feel that we should hold off on hiring a public works director until we've hired a manager so they can be involved in that hiring process?
I do not. I think we need to get a public works director in here as soon as possible. And I'll let Frank speak to that a little bit more. I think he has a sense, being in the borough office every day, of just, what the need is. But I think that has been his opinion that he shared as well, that that we can get a good public works director, and any good borough manager should be able to come in here and pick up there.
Yeah, no, it's a critical position out there, and whoever becomes manager is going to need a strong public works director. So the more time you give yourself, I don't think, there's no cart and horse here that you have to follow. A strong position in the manager's office, strong position out in public works shed, they coexist, but they need to work together ultimately. But I really don't think you need a manager in place first to do that.
Okay.
Plus, on the other side, and I don't want to get too deep into personnel issues, is that we're asking a lot of a guy who's really stepped up to the mic.
Oh, sure.
And, he's doing, as you know, he's doing a great job.
He is.
We don't want to overwork our welcome either. So he's interested in what due diligence that we're pursuing, in fairness to him.
To Bonnie's point, I think it's good to go forward with hiring a public works director now, keep the process going forward. I just want to avoid we don't end up in the position where we're hiring a borough manager, public works director, and then we come back and ask for an assistant borough manager 4 months from now. I want to make sure we're in agreement, we're not adding a third position to the borough payroll.
I don't think that there's any, and this is just, I've just spoken to Frank about his experiences in the office, but I don't think that, I think Frank's experience is that we currently don't need that, but in a year or two, we'll give the new borough manager a chance to get in here and really get a sense of what the staffing needs are. But no, not in a few months. I don't see that happening.
So that was my question, sort of. Our last public works director also had a / assistant manager. That's not the case, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, for the incoming. Thank
Correct. Yeah, that was a holdover from previous staffing levels that I don't think was really necessary.
And it wasn't actually happening in practice, is my
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like, Frank, you've been kind of using the employees more and leveraging their skills better, I think, maybe than what we were doing before. So, I mean, that might kind of eliminate the need for the assistant, at least for the time being.
Well, that's my style. It's, everybody to bring something to the plate. And that's just the way I've always worked. Because, if you don't get the most out of them, I'm not going to be able to give my best to you.
So Frank, if you don't want to be our permanent manager, how about our permanent public works director?
You're not coming through. I can't hear you, Richard.
So Frank, are you going to be involved in the process of picking and choosing our borough manager with us?
I'm very happy to help.
Okay, because you're a breath of fresh air. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I love being here. I do.
That's because you don't see anyone.
I'd be doing traveling.
For our end of year meeting with.
But it's fun. I love local government.
I have nothing else.
You don't? Okay. All right, Richard, I don't believe you have anything because we didn't have a meeting.
No, I tried to reach out to Peggy Curran Hayes to thank her before she retired, but she's already finished she was one of the original members. She's the last original member besides old B from the original meeting 12 years ago.
Wow, the school district lost Peggy.
And the Lion Foundation is losing Robin. It's going to be a big changeover for those two organizations, just like ours.
Yeah, that is a big deal. Okay. All right, so we reached our second time for public comments. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand and Julie will unmute you.
I'm gonna unmute Nancy Bigelow. Maybe.
Nancy, are you there?
Now I am. Not Nancy, it's Bruce.
Hi, Bruce.
Sorry.
Bruce Bigelow, 20 South 26th Street. And just a point of clarification, Zach, I don't know if I missed it or not, but when the council adopted and approved the 2021 budget and stormwater fee, was there a mention of whether there was an increase in taxes or an increase in fees for 2021?
You know what? That's a good point. I did not mention that. I think I was just under the impression we've talked about this so much, but you bring up a good point. So there was no increase, either to the borough's millage or the stormwater fee.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
That's it.
Okay. All right. Ben.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Ben Agostino, representing the Downtown Camp Hill Association and Board. I own a business at 2012 Market Street and am a member of the board of the Downtown Camp Hill Association. So we just really wanted to say thank you to Borough Council, to the staff at the Borough, Mayor Simpson, really for supporting us and working with us to kind of help us realize our mission and vision. So that's really it. Thank you very much. And I hope you guys have a great holiday.
Thanks, Ben.
Adeline.
Hi, this is Adeline Alanis Edwards, 3355 Walnut Street. And I would like to request more frequent maintenance and replacement of the main sewer lines on the west end of the borough. I have reached out to a few of you about this, and I would like to thank Aaron Broman and Alyssa Packer, as well as Mark Simpson, for their responses to my messages. And I would also like to read a public statement about how this issue affects my family's well-being. So the homeowners on the south side of the 3300 block of Walnut Street in Camp Hill continue to have issues with the main sewer line on our street going down 34th Street. Although we've been told by Public Works that the line is flushed and maintained annually, the sewage continues to back up into the homes due to the outdated lines being blocked by tree roots. I'm not sure exactly how many years this has been going on in this location. It became a problem for our family in 2017. when a different homeowner on our block resorted to modifying his pipes to prevent sewage backup in his home. Since then, when the main line is blocked, the sewage skips that house and then enters our house. So what has come to be known as the poopocalypse of 2017 at that time affected at least 3 of the homes on our block, and that was in July of 2017. And after hours of non-response from the borough and Public Works, we called the police non-emergency line. Sewage had been filling our homes for over 6 hours before the line was cleared. The cleanup of our home alone cost over $5,500. Our property damage and loss was extensive, but it was not monetarily assessed as it wasn't covered by our homeowner's insurance at that time. My husband and I have 3 children, and our house is small. It's less than 1,200 square feet. And we bought this house with the intention of using the basement as livable space for our kids. But now that it can really fill up with sewage at any time, it restricts us to living in only half of our home. Last month, the main sewage line was inspected by Public Works because sewer gas was detected in our neighbor's basement. Less than a week later, on Thursday, November 5th, we came home from work to find at least 3,000 gallons of sewage in our basement. After several unsuccessful attempts of contacting the Borough Administration Office and Public Works, the police again assisted us in dispatching Public Works, and the lines were flushed. This time we had added a rider to our insurance policy, which covered some of our property damage and loss. And with the cleanup, we maxed out our policy at $10,000. Please understand that each time this occurs, the cleanup process takes several days. And I'm sure you can imagine how unsettling it is to live in a home that smells and feels contaminated. In several ways, our neighborhood has felt neglected by the borough, and it's very frustrating to me and the other families on the west side of town that the borough continues to allocate funds to $1-million beautification projects and improving parks and the walkability east of 32nd Street, while not even our basic needs of our neighborhood are being met. We've been told that there are plans in the next few years to replace the main sewer line in our area. But what that means to us is that our homes will continue to fill with the borough sewage for the next few years so that the east side of town can be decorated. Although we as citizens are not able to contract any maintenance on the borough-owned main sewer line, after years of sewage backups and property damage, our family is considering modifying our pipes, like some of the other homeowners in our neighborhood, to prevent further damage to our property. This may be an expensive solution for us, but it just passes the problem to the next house down the street. The sewer line needs to be replaced and maintained more frequently until it is. Thank you.
How have we not heard? I've never heard of this. I mean,
Me neither.
how have we not heard about this? I mean, I'm not saying that to you, Adeline. I'm just shocked that this sounds like a major problem, and this does not ring a bell, or do I ever recall discussing?
This is the first meeting I've attended. I just really didn't know who to reach out to besides Public Works, and
Yeah, well, that sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, I'm with you, Zach, and I hadn't heard of it either. So let us, Adeline, do some research on this.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That we all know about it.
Yeah, thanks for coming and bringing it up.
Okay, and then Chris Corrigan.
Real quick first on Adeline's comment, and Frank probably knows this, but if you televise that line, I think I heard her say that they think it's tree roots. You may have a replacement project in the works in the future, but there are companies that can come in and basically like a big roto-rooter, they'll clean out the tree roots for you. Your Public Works guys probably know about that. So
Right, yeah, we can't do it though because it's not our line. I mean, that would be a less expensive solution to the problem. No. The only thing we can do is modify the pipes that are on our property, but the issue is actually down the street.
Right, Adeline, I was referring to the borough, if it's the borough's main that is clogged, that has
Yes.
roots in it. I've experienced that places I've worked. So anyhow, I want to get back to my comment. Mr. Stinnett, I appreciate your reference to Smith versus the Township of Richmond, but you mischaracterized that court decision. Because while it does allow for information only gathering sessions, it also clearly in that decision said that deliberation has to be done in a public meeting. And it noted that the act defines deliberation in terms of discussion of agency business, namely the framing, preparation, or enactment of laws, policies, or regulations, the creation of liability by contract or otherwise. It goes on to point out that this would occur, for example, when agency members weigh the pros and cons of various options involved or otherwise engage in comparisons of different choices available to them as an aid in reaching a decision on the topic. If you go back through the minutes, I can find you several instances in this past year where your own minutes show that the personnel committee deliberated. There was the policy manual that the committee put together for the council, which in fact was Mr. Schultz even congratulated them on saying it was a great job and that the committee put a lot of work into it. That's deliberating to develop that policy manual. The collective bargaining agreement with the police. Now, this can be done in an executive session behind closed door, but it still has to be an advertised public meeting when you're considering that, when you're discussing that contract and whether or not to approve it. The law is really clear, but let me read you one other thing from the court case that Mr. Stinnett cited. The court also said, we observe, moreover, while it is possible such closed door sessions may have a practical benefit as suggested by the sources referenced by the township parties, when an agency holds such gatherings and invites parties to ongoing litigation, skepticism among the general public is not unreasonable, as suspicions may naturally arise that the conversations were aimed at deliberating agency business in private. I can't understand why you fail to advertise the meetings, hold an executive session when appropriate. That's perfectly within your rights to close doors for things delineated in the Sunshine Act. But why do you want to hide it? Even if it's information gathering only, why don't you want the public to be privy to that information? I don't understand the need for secrecy for the Personnel Policy and Procedures Committee. I will tell you right now, it really does seem like a lot of stench. And where there's smoke, there's usually fire. Now, you just advertised all the other committee meetings, but didn't vote to advertise them. I don't want to file criminal charges against you again. I don't want to embarrass the borough. I don't want to get into that, but I will if I have to. Thank you.
I think each of those actions that was mentioned was deliberated and voted on at a public meeting. So to the extent there was any alleged violation would have been cured, and there's a substantial amount of case law on that point as well.
Oh, so okay, we broke the law, but then we cured it by voting on it later in a meeting when the public had no idea what the deliberations entailed. Good advice, Mr. Stinnett. Way to build public confidence. And by the way, the advertising in the Sentinel is also improper, and you know it. It's very clear in the law that it should be a paper that is circulated in the borough. The Sentinel is not.
It's available at every gas station on Long Market Street. I've verified that, including the Giant. It's at every one that meets the definition of general circulation.
I don't think it does, but you cling to that.
Adeline, if you're still on the line, can you send me your email address so we can stay in touch with you? You can reach me at ltwyford@camphillborough.com, just so I have a way to get in touch with you.
I just want to note that we did speak with Adeline and sent her information forward to Frank, and we've talked about that just briefly, and so he does have it.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
I don't know. Bonnie, I don't know when our next public works meeting is, or, Lee, you can decide which committee this goes to, but sounds like something we should talk about very quickly.
Yeah.
Julie,
The next one that's scheduled is January, but like I said, I was waiting to hear back from Penn Waste and perhaps schedule one for this month. So, I'm flexible.
Okay, good. All righty, Julie, any other hands?
There are no other hands at this time.
Okay. Aaron, would you like to adjourn us?
Did any?
Oh, I'm sorry, comments from council. I apologize.
Oh.
Why don't you start out, Aaron? Do you have any comments?
No, I just want to thank everybody for a year together and or apart and hanging in there together. I think we've done a lot of good things despite COVID. And as all know, government takes a long time to move, and we are moving. So good job, everybody.
Bonnie, any comments?
No comments.
Richard?
Happy holidays and best wishes to everybody, especially Mr. Miller.
Yeah, thanks. Alyssa, any comments?
I do not.
Okay, Carl?
I was going to say something very similar to what Aaron said. It hasn't been the easiest year or two, but I will say that this group that we work with is dedicated to nothing other than the betterment of the borough. People put in a tremendous amount of time doing this. I think we are making good progress, and I really appreciate everybody that I work with on council, staff, etc. Thank you. And that is all.
Thanks, Carl. Zach?
Yeah, I just echo the same comments, thanks to everybody, including staff. We have a lot of things going on in a borough of our size with a budget of our size. We're very busy. And, I think despite some small problems and Adeline, yours didn't sound small, but, it is a great place to live. And I'm very proud of it and happy to serve it. Also like to give, Chris Miller an extra shout out. He spent a lot of time this year with the Emergency Operations Center and COVID-19, I think what amounted to hundreds of hours. Other volunteers and employees did too, but he was certainly the quarterback of that process. And Audrey, in a year straight out of hell, it was kind of nice to go, to have this nice Christmas lights display, Toys for Tots parade through the park. And it seemed like it was something that everybody in town could agree with, even the people who don't agree with us on much, that it was a very nice event and a nice way to end the year. So good riddance to 2020.
Yeah, I look forward to being able to be in the same room with you guys again. I miss that. So with that, hopefully this will be one of the last meetings that we will have to zoom out of, but we'll keep our fingers crossed for vaccination to come. Okay, so Aaron?
On that note, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Everybody. Bye.